Brought to you by Charity Mobile, the phone company that supports life and family. 5% of your monthly plan price goes to your favorite charity. Buy the way you believe at CharityMobile.com and use promo code TRADITION.
President Trump, do you have a message for Pope Francis, sir, who's still in the hospital? Do you have a message for Pope Francis, sir?
We wish him well. We want him to get well. It's a very serious situation, but we do want him to get well. That's possible.
President Macron, do you have something to say to the Pope? He's in the hospital? Pope?
Oh, please. Yes, no. We do think about the Holy Pope, and we wish him a recovery and a prompt recovery. Thank you so much.
To say that this story has captured the world's attention would be to make the understatement of the century, it seems like. And with this story, Francis's health, we're seeming to be taking the worst possible turn, as is predictable for an 88-year-old man with a history of lung conditions. Predictable lung conditions. It seems to happen every winter. Chaos has ensued. And not chaos as in cardinals running willy-nilly, doing whatever they want to do in the church, although that could very well be happening behind the scenes. A different kind of chaos. We are getting competing narratives now that are coming from alternate realities. Somebody in the news leaking business here has to be lying about what's going on in Rome, because either the staff, the professionals helping Francis, and the Vatican media are lying, or there are people leaking the other narrative that are lying. You by now heard the rumor that Francis only has, as of yesterday, 72 hours left, which means probably at this point 60 hours, if we are being literal about 72 hours. Let's go first here to we'll call it the official narrative. This is from this morning, just an hour ago or something, from Catholic Sat, who monitors the news coming out of Rome. He always gives just dispassionate takes. And they say the latest on Pope Francis from the Vatican. The Pope rested well all night. If that sounds familiar, that's how they're talking about this. It should, to the point where it's starting to make me want to pull my hair out, because they are saying nothing every single morning, and then they say something else in the afternoon, often looking a little bit like this. This is from Rich Rejo, someone I would normally never really say a good thing about because his takes are cringe-inducing usually, but he is doing a very good job, a laudable job, on keeping people updated on the official narrative. And he says, Vatican sources say the Pope's mood is good and is eating normally. Tonight in St. Peter's Square, Cardinal Dolan will pray the rosary for the Pope's intention and for all who are sick. And then he said the Pope is continuing with therapy. He has no pain. He said that later in the same day. That's the official narrative. We'll get to Cardinal Pietro Parolin here in a moment. And then this was all part of the big news update from Francis. From the official narrative was this. Catholic Sat again. The latest on Pope Francis from the Holy See press office, who, though still in critical condition, is showing slight improvements and was back at work today. He also phoned the parish in the Holy Land to express his closeness to them, meaning he's still working. The statement in full. The clinical condition of the Holy Father, though still critical, show a slight improvement. Today, there were no episodes of asthmatic respiratory crises. Some laboratory tests have improved. Monitoring of the mild renal insufficiency does not cause concern. Oxygen therapy continues with slightly reduced flow and percentage of oxygen, which would mean, sounds to me like they're giving that he's improving on that score, according to the official narrative. The doctors, considering the complexity of the clinical procedure, prudentially do not yet give a prognosis for the 10th day in a row. In the morning, the Pope received Holy Communion, while in the afternoon he resumed his work. In the evening, he called the parish priest of that parish in the Holy Land to express his paternal closeness. Pope Francis thanked all the people of God who have gathered in recent days to pray for his health. That's the official narrative. Notice something about it. Every single day, with the exception of like one day where he took a bad downturn, we're told he's improving. And then you give you some vague platitudes about it. You get 2 updates a day typically from them. The first in the morning is he slept well, he had breakfast, is reading the news, going to mass, and doing work. The doing work part is something people are very concerned about, by the way, because, as I told you, one of the things you should watch for is documents being released. If he starts releasing documents, changing conclave rules, especially, you'll know. Now, he might not do that, but it would be a pretty obvious sign if he was. But that what I just gave you was the official narrative. Now let's go to the other narrative. Again, I already sort of spoiled the lead on that, but Taylor Marshall's live streamed on this yesterday, so I'm sure many of you saw the general story, but I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start here with Cardinal Dolan, and I'm going to remind you of something here. Cardinal Dolan, apologies for New York Post here, their ad in Pop-Up City is just nuts, and the US or YouTube does not like us using things that will prevent that from happening. The New York Post reported on this, and this reporting here is indicative of the posturing that's beginning, the political posturing in the church. So we go here to New York Post, the headline, Pope Francis awake on 10th day of hospitalization as early kidney failure kicks in. As I described yesterday, I went over what that actually means, or what it could mean when you look at the generally official kind of narrative on this. But he goes into a bit about Cardinal Parolin leading a prayer that we'll talk about here in a moment. But here's what they say from Cardinal Dolan, who a couple days ago decided he's going to start doing some very public things, the kind of movement you will see from cardinals getting ready for a conclave. Here's what he had to say from the article, quote, in New York on Sunday, Cardinal Timothy Dolan acknowledged what church leaders in Rome weren't saying publicly. The Catholic faithful were united at the bedside of a dying father, and they're quoting him directly on that. As our Holy Father, Pope Francis, is in very, very fragile health and probably close to death, Dolan said in his homily from the pulpit of St. Patrick's Cathedral, though he later told reporters he hoped and prayed that Francis would, quote, bounce back. Francis's condition has revived speculation about what might happen if he becomes unconscious or otherwise incapacitated, and whether he might resign, end quote. I would be shocked if he resigned. I know that's not the most popular take among people. I would be utterly shocked if he resigned. But you notice how what he said there kind of conflicts with what the official narrative from Rome is. A couple days ago, I showed you a video clip of the doctor saying, oh, he's fine. He's improving. He's fine. He'll be here for a couple of weeks, and then he'll go home. And then literally the next day, he had that downturn in his health. That's not the only one here that is publishing a questionable alternative. And I say questionable because we're now at a point of almost like the fog of an information war where you can't quite make out what's going on. It's hard to discern the truth here. It's a diabolic disorientation. This comes from ansa.it, the English language version of it. They're an Italian news source. The headline is time for hope against all hope for Pope Gemini Chaplain. Father Nunzio Correo leads prayer for Pontific Gemelli Hospital. This is a chaplain who works at the hospital saying this. His rhetoric here is not exactly the most hope-inspiring for those of you who are hoping Francis pulls through. And what he says here is conflicting with what the doctors have said. I will remind you again, both of what the doctors and the Vatican media are saying and what Cardinal Dolan and this chaplain are saying cannot both be true. Somebody is lying. And if it's the Vatican media, obviously I should not have to tell you that if Cardinal Dolan repeating bad information he heard and he thinks it's true, that's not a sin. That's just him repeating bad information, right? As far as I can tell, it's not a sin. But if somebody along down the line is making up rumors that Francis, who they accept as the Pope, is imminently going to pass away, that is grotesque. But on the flip side of that, if the medical doctors and the Vatican media are lying, that's a sin. That's grotesque. And you have to ask what's going through their heads on this. And there's also that limiting question, do we have the right to the truth about this? Let me know in the comments. Do we as Catholics, and can you make a Catholic case for us having a right to the truth and the accurate information about what's happening with Francis on this? Let me know in the comments or the live chat if you believe we have a right as Catholics to that. I'm curious what you have to say. But here's what the The chaplain at the hospital that Francis is at has to say. Father Nunzio Carreo, chaplain of the Agostino Gemelli Hospital where Pope Francis is being treated for double pneumonia, said on Monday that the time had come to hope against all hope for the pontiff, quoting St. Paul's epistle to the Romans. In this moment, I would like to ask for Abraham's same faith, the spes contra spem, hope against all hope in Latin, said Father Carreo, leading a prayer on Monday morning at Rome's Polyclinic. Against all hope, Abraham in hope believed, is the passage quoted by the chaplain. During the prayer held in the St. John Paul II chapel near the hospital's hall dedicated to the Pope, who is in the hospital's special papal suite on the 10th floor, Father Correo recalled the pontiff's desire for peace. I am certain the Pope is also using this moment of suffering to ask the Lord for peace after 3 years of war in Europe as well as in the Middle East, without also forgetting the other wars. End quote. He is quoted elsewhere as saying, Francis has 72 hours, which came out like 12 hours ago. Again, somebody is lying. Is that the doctors and the Vatican media? Is it the chaplain who's telling the truth? A chaplain is a priest, at least in the Catholic tradition. So is the priest and Cardinal Dolan lying? Or is the Vatican media, run by a bunch of middle managers in Vatican City, and the medical staff there? And for those of you with longer memories, remember when John Paul II was in his last days and how the media news reports were suspiciously similar to what we're getting now. That's not all. Last night we had Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who is generally speaking considered rather high on the list of potential Francis successors. He led a rosary last night in Rome for Francis. Rich Rejo again. Vatican. This evening, the cardinals residing in Rome with all the collaborators of the Roman Curia and the Diocese of Rome, gathering the sentiments of the people of God, will gather in St. Peter's Square at 9 p.m. Rome time for the rosary led by Cardinal Parolin. 9 p.m. Rome time, at least in the central part of the U.S., is something like 2 or 3 o'clock. I always can't remember if it's 6 or 7 hours from where I'm at, but it gives you an idea of what time the time difference is. And Catholic Herald reported on this, and there was an interesting person who was there. The headline is Cardinals gather at St. Peter's to lead church in the evening rosary for the Pope. And it's interesting that this is Cardinal Pietro Parolin, because Parolin is one of the cardinals who, if there is a conclave coming, is often listed as a tyrannical successor for Francis, someone who will keep that program going, change it to fit his own kind of vision of things, and is so overtly hostile to the traditional mass, it makes Pope Francis look tolerant and kind by comparison. And he's also considered very papabile. He is the Secretary of State, sort of the chief diplomat. All the nuncios answer to him. He's the one leading the rosary. Most of this article is just a repetition of everything we know here, but he said the Holy See press office released a statement announcing that starting this evening, the cardinals residing in Rome, along with all collaborators of Roman Curia, were offering the rosary at 9 p.m. Today's prayer noted will be led by His Eminence, Cardinal Secretary of State Pietro Parolin. And then he goes on to talk about everything else we know. It's worth noting here, and we're going to keep this live stream real short today, just because, but Joshua T. Charles, whom if you are on X and not following, you should fix that and follow him. He does a lot of Catholic apologetics in defense of the faith, talking about his personal testimony, converting from Protestantism to Catholicism, challenging Protestants to actually read the Church Fathers and other things and come to the same realizations he did. He pointed out something. He found something about this gathering that was interesting. He says, I really love and admire Cardinal Burke. He and the Pope have not always had the smoothest relationship. But here he is, one of the few, if only, American cardinals be praying the rosary for Francis in Rome tonight. Christian charity and grace on display, worthy of emulation. He's repeating from the Catholic Traveler. Anyone catch Cardinal Burke at the rosary tonight? There's Cardinal Burke. What do you notice about how he's dressed? He's not there flaunting his cardinal's attire, making sure everybody can see him. There he is. He's wearing a trench coat and a hat. And he's sitting there praying the rosary. said a lot about political posturing for the next conclave. This is not political posturing. I have my differences with Cardinal Burke. I don't usually hide them. I'm not a big fan of his take on the Society of St. Pius X, to put it mildly. But this is laudable. This is how everybody should be reacting. Whether you think Francis is the greatest thing since sliced bread, or if you think that he is a horrible anti-pope, everybody should be praying for, and I was thinking about this yesterday. My family and I kind of took a day off after having spent 2 weeks iced in our house and sick. We took a bit of a drive yesterday. It's one of the reasons I'm keeping this live stream short. I'm extremely tired today. While driving, I was thinking about this, that at the end of the day, Francis's interior state is only known to two people, Francis himself and, of course, to our Lord. So everybody should be praying with the intention of God granting the grace, that whatever grace it is that Francis needs. Whether that's a grace of final perseverance, if he was in a state of grace already, or if he needs to convert from heresies, as many of us attest, or something else. The salvation of souls is the first law of the church. It is our first concern. It's why I haven't given you Vigano's response to things. He put out some spicy stuff, but I question the appropriateness of the timing. But the overall story here is that somebody is lying in Rome. If it's the doctors or somebody is spreading diabolical rumors. We're seeing these all over the place. And the reason I can't get completely on board with the 72 hours number is for one main reason. A week ago, like the day after Francis went to the hospital, it was reported in Italian news that he had received viaticum and wouldn't be around for another day. Like 10 days later, we know that wasn't true either. So somebody is spreading misinformation. And if you are in official capacity working for the church, you cannot be lying. You shouldn't lie anyway. It's obviously a deadly sin. But to do so, either as a doctor or a Vatican media figure in an official capacity, is grotesque. And if you're just making up rumors for clicks or whatever, or to promote a false narrative, this is why, folks, I'm going to wrap this up right now and ask you that in addition to praying for Francis, whatever grace he needs, to that which is only known to God, also pray for all the people here who are in the position to launch the information coming from Rome, whether it's the chaplain or Vatican media figures, whoever is responsible and deceiving people in this. Pray that the truth would prevail, because if Francis is truly in his last 60 hours at this point, then every Catholic should be praying that he goes to our Lord on the side of the angels. Whether you believe him to be a luminous pope sent by God to transform the church, or you believe him to be a monstrous anti-pope, the salvation of souls is the highest law of the church, and heaven rejoices in the conversion of a sinner. That is what is called for. And anybody lying about his state, one way or the other, is committing a sin. Unless, of course, you don't believe the laity have the right to know, and that in this case, lying is okay. But I can't quite get on board that. Because I will be the first to admit, sometimes our demand to know everything going on is a product of the age we live in. Lying is still a sin. And the reason I suspect it's the hospital lying is because now for 10 days, they give us this same nonsensical story every morning. An hour before I did this live stream, they gave the update. Francis slept peacefully. The same update they give every day. Slept peacefully, is having breakfast and doing work. Going to mass. And then it seems like you're tossing a coin. You're flipping a coin to see whether he's going to have had a decent day or something catastrophically bad happened. That conflicts in general with that morning update they gave. This is why I kind of think, personally, that it's the hospital and the Vatican media deceiving people. And pray that they have a repentance of heart for that. Because in deceiving people, not only are they committing a grave sin, they're also committing a sin against essentially charity. Because people should be praying for Francis, whether it's for his conversion or final perseverance. Whatever it is, only God knows the truth. I'm going to say something here that's going to be fairly unpopular. This is based on a conversation I had with a traditional priest. If Francis does go to his judgment, the heresies he has promoted are public in nature. Do you know what is required of a public sin? To make good restitution for it, to make a valid confession. Part of that is the priest will tell you that you have to go in public to correct things publicly. Otherwise, the confession will not be valid. Now, the situation like somebody like Francis, he could be surrounded at all times by sycophants who he could write a letter repudiating whatever, demand to say, upon my passing, make this public, and then they don't do it. That could possibly be the case, but I doubt it. So please pray for him. Anthony Evans said, pray for content creators. Anthony, I don't know if you saw my live stream. I am so just annoyed with people who are just rushing to go out and breathlessly do the sky is falling, spreading unverified rumors. I'm so annoyed. I expect better. And I know the temptation. I'm sure you do too. Anthony, for those watching, is the host of Avoiding Babylon. Check it out on YouTube. I show up there once in a while. He just broadcasts a little late in the day for my ability to go on very often. But when you're talking about this kind of thing, you have to be, there's prudence that has to be done. He's old. He probably sometimes feels well, sometimes not. Well, when you're at that age and you're dealing with what he's going to have, you're going to have good days and bad. There's also another thing. There are people out there now using unapproved not apparitions, but mystics. They're so-called prophecies, many times from sources condemned by local bishops, which means that you as laity aren't supposed to touch the stuff when the local bishop says no. But they do it anyway. They promote the stuff online. And these are people who clearly believe Pope Francis is the false prophet, as in the false prophet from the Apocalypse of St. John, the book of Revelation. And they are telling you all sorts of weird stuff. And I'm going to wonder what's going to happen and extremely likely that Francis in the next 3 days, I'm here reporting to you their funeral plans. If that happens, pray for those people promoting that too, because there is some deep-seated disorder there. William Murphy says, there's not been any item about Francis on the front page of BBC News for many hours. That's fascinating. Because I know there have been a couple media outlets that showed up in Rome early on in this process. Maybe they're getting the same insider information that Raymond Arroyo and others have gotten, because Raymond Arroyo confirmed the 72-hour thing from his sources. But the AP, Reuters, and I think the BBC have all set up like around-the-clock live streaming in Rome, as if they know they've got some sort of insider information the rest of us just don't have. Chris says, thanks for my efforts, Chief. Yeah, I'm trying to remain a balanced, restrained approach, and this is just so frustrating. Steamer says, the media are lying. I'm shocked. Shocked, I tell you, shocked. Yeah, I know. Don't even get me started on what's going on in the secular world with their lies these days. YouTube Sucks says, yes, please hit the like button. Yes, please do. Jump Master says, I have no doubt that many of those surrounding Francis want him to go away. Well, I don't know if you watched yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Yesterday was a pretty long day for us here in the Stine household. But yesterday morning, I reported that there were, cardinals around him who were basically saying, oh, yeah, he's going to resign. He should totally resign. And these were full-throated Bergoglians. These were people who were 2 months ago the biggest cheerleaders for him, promoting everything he wanted to do. Now they're the ones trying to put pressure on him to resign. Careful who you make your friends with. All right, folks. Thanks very much for tuning in. I tell you all, as always, to pray for the church and pray for Pope Francis, that he receive whatever grace that it is that God knows that he needs to, so that he may go to his judgment on the side of the angels. While he breathes, he has a chance. So please pray for him. And as always, pray for the church. Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.